Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining me today because we are going to unpack a massive, really critical paradigm shift happening in today's workplace. We're talking about the evolution from being a traditional manager to becoming a modern leader. Now, I know that might just sound like a subtle change in vocabulary, right? But I promise you it is a radical, fundamental shift in daily behavior. We're going to look at exactly why this shift is absolutely required right now, and more importantly, how you can actually make it happen. Okay, let's dive right in with a number that should honestly wake up every single executive. 82%. According to Gallup, a staggering 82% of managers lack the fundamental skills needed for their roles. I mean, just think about that for a second. For decades, organizations have basically promoted their great individual performers into management roles, given them a firm handshake, and just hoped for the best. They were promoted for execution, not for their people skills. And well, the fallout of that skills gap is staggering. 80% of the workforce is actively disengaged. Why? Because 70% of employee engagement is determined entirely by their interactions with their manager. It's huge. If people are managed poorly, they just check out. So this isn't just some vague organizational issue. It's a very localized, very real management crisis.
So, how do we fix it? Well, here is our roadmap for today. First, manager versus modern leader. Second, the power of vulnerability. Third, active listening in action. Fourth, influence without formal authority. And finally, ethics, trust, and accountability. We're going to replace those outdated command and control instincts with real, actionable modern leadership skills.
All right, Section 1, Manager versus Modern Leader. Let's look at the massive gap between traditional management and what the modern workforce actually expects from the people in charge today. As you can see, there is a stark contrast between these two paradigms. The old CEO model was kind of your classic Jack Welch style, command and control, leaning heavily on positional power, and frankly, operating under the immense pressure of being expected to have all the answers all the time. But the new leader model, that demands authenticity, empathy, and a strong coaching mindset. And look, this shift isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's a strict requirement, especially as Generation Z is projected to make up 30% of the workforce by 2030. They don't just want a boss. They demand a coach who actively values psychological safety and personal development.
Which brings us to Section 2, the power of vulnerability. If we want to make the leap to modern leadership, we have to take this so-called soft skill and completely reframe it as a rigorous strategic competency.
Now, this right here is the question I hear all the time. Will vulnerability make leaders vulnerable? Like, will it diminish their influence? And hey, it's a completely valid fear. Many executives worry that if they open up or, heaven forbid, admit they don't have all the answers, they're going to lose the respect of their team. But true vulnerability is really about shifting from proving yourself to improving yourself. It's an open mindset. And yes, for sure, it requires balancing competence with honesty, but it absolutely does not mean giving up your authority.
Actually, consider Steve Jobs. He was famously dominant, right? Really tough. Yet, later in his career, he really leaned into vulnerability. By talking openly about his battle with cancer and his own mortality, he wasn't showing weakness at all. He was showing a magnetic, incredibly powerful humanity. Vulnerability gives leaders the ultimate permission to invite thoughts and insights from others. And doing that is exactly what builds profound, lasting trust.
So, the crucial point is what this actually looks like in action. Take Rita Roy, the CEO of the philanthropic MasterCard Foundation. When setting up programs in sub-Saharan Africa, her team initially rolled out microloans based on their own internal assumptions. But when she truly listened to the local communities, she realized, oh wait, they didn't want loans, they needed savings accounts. Instead of getting defensive about the original plan, she pivoted. Later, when a partner organization confronted her about feeling disrespected by the foundation's unresponsiveness, she didn't make excuses. She stood right up, publicly apologized in front of the group, and promised to change. Putting aside pride to admit a mistake didn't make her look weak. It created this incredible watershed moment that built massive, unshakable organizational trust. Moving right along to Section 3, active listening in action. Because honestly, you can't be vulnerable and you certainly can't build trust if you don't know how to truly listen. You see, modern leaders don't just passively hear information. They actively listen so they can coach. The Center for Creative Leadership gives us this great, practical 6-step framework to turn literally any standard conversation into a profound coaching opportunity. It starts with paying attention and, crucially, withholding judgment. Then it moves to reflecting, clarifying, and summarizing, all before you ever even share your own ideas. Let's look at what Step 3, reflecting and validating, actually sounds like in the real world. Imagine an employee comes to you and says, Emma is so loyal to her people, but no matter how much I push, her team keeps missing deadlines. Now, a modern leader doesn't immediately jump in with a fix. They mirror it back. They say, so Emma's people skills are great, but accountability is a problem. By paraphrasing, you validate their frustration, you show high emotional intelligence, and you ensure you're both on the exact same page. But here's the real kicker. Research shows that listening alone just isn't enough. Employee perception of being listened to is literally 2 times greater when a leader listens and then actually takes action. If you're a phenomenal active listener but you never follow through, well, employees just stop sharing. They opt for silence out of fear or just plain apathy. Listening combined with appropriate action is the absolute engine that drives organizational innovation. All right, Section 4, influence without formal authority. We have to talk about this because the reality of the modern workplace is that those traditional direct reporting lines are constantly blurring.
In today's highly complex matrix organizations, leaders constantly find themselves accountable for outcomes delivered by people who don't actually report to them. If you try to rely solely on your job title to force action in that kind of environment, you are just going to create friction and resistance. Sure, you might force compliance, but you will never inspire anyone's best work. Influence without authority means relying on your networks, your expertise, and the trust you've built through vulnerability and active listening to actually get things done.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, ethics, trust, and accountability. If influence is the currency of modern leadership, accountability is the gold standard backing it all up.
And the science totally backs this up. Decades of peer-reviewed research, beautifully mapped out here in this bibliometric cluster analysis, prove that accountability doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It is deeply fundamentally interconnected with ethical leadership, job performance, and organizational control systems. It clearly shows that when leaders practice ethical behavior and hold themselves genuinely accountable, it drives hard, tangible business results. It's a real game changer.
So how do we actually operationalize everything we've talked about today? Well, we rely on this 70-20-10 learning model for development. 10% comes from formal training, 20% from coaching and relationships, but a massive 70% comes from on-the-job experience. To maximize that 70%, you need to shift away from just having a traditional to-do list filled with tasks, budgets, and, trying to prove yourself. Instead, a modern leader needs a to-be list. Think of this as your behavioral compass. It's a conscious reminder of how you want to show up every single day in those on-the-job experiences. Are you choosing to be open, warm, and vulnerable? Are you focused on improving yourself and coaching others? The to-be list is anchored right in your core character traits.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly vital question. Before you check your inbox today, before you lead your very next meeting, ask yourself, who are you choosing to be today? Are you going to rely on a title and demand compliance? Or are you going to listen, show a little vulnerability, and truly lead? The choice is entirely yours, but the success of your team absolutely depends on it. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and I'll see you next time.